But we don't need a good enough deal to get across the line. When British businesses needed something with a really good kick in it to get this country growing, instead of a vindaloo of a deal, the Prime Minister came back with a bag of soggy poppadums.
That this deal is supported by the Federation of Small Businesses, by HSBC, by Standard Chartered, by EY, by the City UK, by Revolut, and I don't think that they think of it as soggy poppadums at all. I think they think of it as a fine tandoori.
We support the advantages of a sovereign trade policy, and this is an excellent example of this, with one of the largest economies on the planet that is growing at approximately 5 times faster than the European Union. We do think this deal could have been better. We are passionate in supporting our investors, our lawyers, our engineers, our scientists, the wonderful services industry. We believe that they can compete anywhere in the world, provided the field is level and the rules are fair. But we don't need a good enough deal to get across the line. When British businesses needed something with a really good kick in it to get this country growing, instead of a vindaloo of a deal, the Prime Minister came back with a bag of soggy poppadoms.
First of all, it was a great delight to hear. I'm going to crack through as many of the questions as have been put to me, because I know honourable members like to hear answers, so I will try to do that as fast as I possibly can. The honourable member for Arundel and South Downs, a great delight, as always, to see him at the dispatch box. He did a bit of a rant about Brexit and how much he's still in favour of it. He's probably be the last person still in favour of Brexit, just as he's still the last person still in favour of the trust budget, because he helped write it. Just on services, he asked specifically about services, and it's a legitimate point that he made about services, which is, first of all, of course, we would like to go further on services. 2 things I would just say to him. First of all, we have secured significant advantages in relation to telecoms and in relation to construction services. I've already referred to the better deal that we've had on procurement than the European Union. And of course, what is also part of this is that we've been guaranteed MFN status, most favoured nation status, on 40 different sectors, including accounting and auditing services, architectural services, engineering services, higher education, building cleaning services, photographic services, packaging services, convention services, interior design services, and so on. And I think that goes to the point that the Honourable Lady just made about, is this going to be a living process? We don't need to return to the negotiating table. We actually have a structure built into this FTA which enables us to be able to take things forward. And in fact, the first review of the deal will happen on the entry into force date, which I hope will, as I said earlier, will be before the summer. And I'm very keen not to give way to anybody else, because there's not much time and I've got to answer all the questions that have already been asked me. About legal services, of course, we would have much preferred to have been able to secure legal services as part of this. We have a very strong legal services sector in the UK. They are excellent. I was with the head of the Law Society in Riyadh last week, celebrating some of the changes that are happening and the opportunities that are happening in Saudi Arabia, for instance. The difficulty is that, as the Indians made it very, very clear in the whole of the negotiating process, law is a noble profession, very specifically understood as such within the Indian constitution. It would have required significant changes to primary legislation in India, and it wasn't something that we were able to achieve. Similarly, of course, we would have preferred to have been able to secure a bilateral investment treaty. We stand ready to start that process whenever India would like to be able to do so. I'm really glad that we have a digital trade chapter, because so many parts of the trade that we now do internationally are digital, and lots of other arrangements don't end up that way. I should just say in reversion to services that it's because of the way we've transacted this that this deal is supported by the Federation of Small Businesses, by HSBC, by Standard Chartered, by EY, by the City UK, by Revolut, and I don't think that they think of it as soggy poppadums at all. I think they think of it as a fine tandoori. The honourable friend for Bradford East and several other members referred to the issues in relation to Kashmir, and the honourable member just now gave us some shocking stories about the situation in Kashmir. I was once the curate in High Wycombe, and I know that there's a large Kashmiri population there who have felt many of the issues in relation to Kashmir ever since the 1940s. And of course, we want to make sure, it's been a historic British position, that India and Pakistan need to come to a settlement of their agreement. I should just say that for the purposes of the CETA, the core text chapters define India's territory as set out in India's constitution, but emphasise that this is without prejudice to territorial sovereignty or compatibility with international law. And also, just a really important point which nobody's referred to, but Pakistan enjoys preferential tariff rates when trading with the UK under the Developing Country Trading Scheme, the DCTS, which offers significant preferential access. Approximately 94% of Pakistani goods are eligible for 0% tariffs, and that runs out for India 3 years after entry into force of the FTA. So it is not silent, as it were, in relation to the relationship between the two. I think some honourable members have said that there is nothing in here about human rights. Well, first of all, it's not true. There are provisions. It's also not true to say that none of this is legally binding. The whole of the agreement is legally binding. And there are review processes built into this FTA in a way which I think make it possible for us to be able to monitor human rights. But I would also say, in relation to human rights, that the EU deal doesn't enter into human rights issues either, and traditionally doesn't. We of course want every element of what we engage with in another country to be able to reflect the values that we want to protect. And that, for instance, is an opposition to the death penalty, opposition to forced labour, and so many other things. I'm not going to, if he doesn't mind, just if he lets me finish the point. But a lot of that toolkit lies outside trade. It lies with the monitoring of human rights that our High Commission in India does on a regular basis, and of course we raise all the individual issues that have been referred to. I will give way to him because I can never ever resist him. We used to be on a select committee together.
Thank for the Minister, but in terms of the EU deal not being covered by human rights, we are all covered by the European Convention of Human Rights. You have that umbrella that does not exist for countries like India, and that's quite important, especially because his party and my party are committed to remaining within that framework.
Minister Bryant.
I'm as committed to remaining within the European Convention on Human Rights as I ever was, and so does the UK government, and I think it would be an absolute derogation of our international standing around the world if we were to depart it, which is one of the many reasons that I oppose not only the Conservative Party, which seems to have gone doolally in recent years, but those members who were elected as Conservatives and have now joined another political party. I also want to make it absolutely clear to my honourable friend and to others who've referred to these issues that Kashmiri Britons are of course listened to, and the kind of stories that we heard are ones that that do concern us, of course. The honourable member for Witney, he pushed in the other direction in relation to Brexit, but he made a good point, which I completely agree with him, in relation to the, I might slightly disagree with him about the precise amount of harm that Brexit has done to our trade opportunities in the UK, but I just note that a very large number of UK businesses no longer export into the European Union, and I think that that is a massive failure for the UK, and that's why we're very keen to secure a better deal with the European Union, and that's what we're working on. He talked about sanctions and Russia, and I know I'm appearing before the select committee on which he sits, so he gets many bites of this cherry. I say to my honourable friend, the chair of the committee, that when I come to talk about trade sanctions in the next few weeks, I'm very happy to go into the very specific details that he's raised in relation to Russia. I would just gently say to him that I worry when I hear, well, I get a bit irritated when I hear Lib Dems talking about Russia, because I remember being in this House in 2014 when Russia first invaded Crimea. I know he wasn't in the House, but the Liberal Democrats were members of the government, which, and it's not just this government, but many other governments, essentially allowed Putin to take Crimea with impunity, and that's left us with some of the problems that we have today. So where I completely agree with him is that we need to debilitate the Russian system as much as possible. We have introduced sanctions on entities, including India's Nayara Energy Limited, to make sure that we disrupt Russia's energy revenues. We are undermining the shadow fleet wherever we possibly can. We've taken further sanctions against another 500. I'm very reluctant to, because I've only got another 4 minutes. He's on the Select Committee. He'll be able to ask me as many questions. It won't be 1 second. That's an untruth. And on October the 25th, we said we will extend our ban on imports of oil products refined in third countries using Russian crude oil. The honourable gentleman, my honourable friend for West Dunbartonshire, I will specifically refer to his constituent whose 39th birthday it is today. He knows that I too feel and have met with his constituent's family. It is good that some of the charges against him have already been dealt with and he's been acquitted. We want to see the rest of the charges, and I think there's another 8 charges that have been laid against him, dealt with as swiftly as possible. We make this argument to the Indian government as frequently as we possibly can, and we also believe, he didn't refer to this, but I think he would agree with this point, that we want to make sure that there is a full investigation into his allegations of torture, because that is an important part of us maintaining an open relationship with India. The Honourable Lady for the Weald of Kent made a speech primarily about one specific issue. It was brief and to the point, and for which I commend her. If only I could learn the same. She referred to the double contributions convention. I would just point out to her that it's a very large number of countries that the Conservative government previously did almost identical arrangements with, including not just Chile and Japan, South Korea, all of the EU, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, Switzerland, Barbados, Canada, Jamaica, Mauritius, the Philippines, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Northern Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Turkey, and the United States of America. This will not undermine, and this is the finding of the committee, this will not undermine British workers. It won't make it cheaper. But this is about highly skilled workers employed by Indian companies on a temporary basis, paying contributions for their own country rather than in the UK. The deal hasn't finally been struck. Negotiations are ongoing, and of course that will be subject to its own process of going through the House, where members will be able to raise it. I've only got another 2 minutes. The honourable member, the chair of the Select Committee, made lots of good points. I think he referred to Cragg and said that a votable motion was guaranteed by the then minister in 2010. I was the minister. I'm not sure that I then guaranteed a votable motion, but I take the point he makes about greater scrutiny. And as I say, when I come to talk about the Office of Trade Sanctions implementation, I hope we'll be able to deal with some of the other issues that he referred to. The honourable member for Arbroath and Broughty Ferry referred to higher education. I'm delighted to say, obviously, higher education is one of the things that MFN applies to as part of the deal. And I was proud that the Prime Minister was able to open 2 new campuses, higher education campuses in India when he visited in October. He makes a fair point about the European Parliament's good practice on trade deals, and it's something that I will reflect on. The honourable member for Perry Barr, I didn't agree with everything that I said, but I understood the sentiment with which he said it. I would just make the point to him that the whole of the agreement is legally binding, the whole thing. And that's why I'm glad that we've secured in our deal chapters that have not previously been in any others. The Honourable Member for Dumfries and Galloway referred to government figures seeming too low. One of the figures is probably too low, and that's because we've tried to err on a conservative side. In particular, some of these figures presume that we will not be doing any additional trade as a result of the FTA, but I think we will. So I think we could say, well, we will do better. The Honourable Member for North Antrim said, and I'll end with this point, if I may, Madam Deputy Speaker, he said that there's an enormous irony of a Remainer such as myself standing here and proclaiming this. Well, the thing is, I deal with the world as I find it, not as I would wish it to be. I can't unmake the past, but I can make sure that we exploit the present to the best benefit of British business. And I think that's what this trade deal does.